We're here, we're queer, and we love the Lord. That's right, you're listening to Coming Out Christian, a podcast about life at the intersection of queer identity and Christian faith. This fun, faithful, and sometimes irreverent podcast is a production of Love Boldly, an Ohio-based nonprofit creating spaces where LGBTQIA+ people can flourish in Christianity. I'm one of your hosts, Siobhan Boyd Nelson, and my co-host is the Reverend Dr. Ben Hillscamp, Executive Director of Love Boldly. So join us, and let's find out who's coming out today. Well, hello there, Ben.
Hello, Siobhan. How are you?
Oh, hanging in there. Can't really complain too much because that weather outside, Ben. Now that is spring.
Yes, it is. It is both spring when we're recording, and hopefully it's just this beautiful again on June 21st when this episode comes out.
I sure do hope so, but it'll be June, so it'll be much more likely rather than March, right? Where I think we're going to get about a 30 to 40 degree drop in temperature overnight. And, you know, that's Ohio, right? That's spring in Ohio.
Yep, that it is.
Well, thinking about June and when this episode airs, it'll be Pride Weekend. We should say happy Columbus Stonewall Pride Weekend to everyone.
Yes, indeed.
And we hope that you had a chance to stop by and visit our booth and say happy birthday to Ben, who will be our birthday ED at the booth all weekend, right? Isn't that exciting?
Yes, it is.
So hopefully you stopped by and said happy birthday to him in person. But if you didn't make it by, send him an email, send him a shout out on Instagram, something like that. Or you could even donate in his honor. That would be an amazing, amazing gift. Giving to our LGBTQ plus nonprofits locally is such an amazing way to celebrate Pride season.
Amen.
Are there any other things that you like to do to celebrate Pride that maybe aren't, the norm? Everyone does. Well, I won't say everyone, but the things that are popular are the parade, the festival, the drag shows, the clubbing, right? So is there anything different that is unique to Pride season that you like to do, Ben?
Well, it's not exactly unique to Pride season, but and I recognize I'm a little biased when I say this, but I love the interfaith Pride services that happen all over the country. Actually, my very first Pride, the first time I ever attended Pride was Capitol Pride, Washington, D.C., and they had a really cool interfaith service that week before the parade, the festival, and everything else. And we started doing the same thing here in Columbus in Central Ohio a few years ago. So when this airs, we will have already done that as well. But yeah, that's one of the things I really like about Pride. And I think in a slightly larger sense, I love those times when the community comes together for events, for just for making space where it's not about parades, it's not about the festival, it's not about clubbing, it's something else, whatever that other thing might be. Doesn't necessarily have to be faith-based, but just queer a Pride themed book club night or something for those of us who are book loving introverts. I don't know. I love those spaces.
Ben, this is reminding me of two things. So first, it sounds like we both attended our first Prides in DC, which is, and though mine wasn't Capitol Pride, mine was DC Black Pride, which is held over Memorial Day weekend each year. But we both attended our first Prides in DC, which I find that to be very cool. And so as I'm thinking back to my first Prides in DC, definitely it was the clubbing, right? That's all I wanted to do was hang out with the ladies, go to all the clubs, be cute, be seen. And then I would see that there were all these daytime activities. And I said, oh, that's what the old folks do. And then I think you know what I'm going to tell you. I'm the old folks now. That's what I want to do. I want to go to, a special book reading or, a poetry slam or have someone in to do a talk from out of town or see a special film screening. I'm old. I'm the old ones doing all the daytime programming at Pride.
Hey, being the old ones just means that we made it through what the young ones
Yes,
do, and now we have the option.
true.
We can still be cool among our friend group and go to the day stuff, and if we want to do the nighttime stuff, we can.
We can. I could. Just probably not going to. No one hold their breath. No one hold their breath out there. Unless someone tricks me, you're probably not going to see me out past 9 p.m.
Yep,
Bond's got a
yep.
bedtime. Yeah. All right. Well, that's enough about Pride. I mean, there can never be too much about Pride, but we got to jump into this week's episode because we have such a beautiful and amazing guest, and I'm so excited to hear from her. Pastor Julia, excuse me, let me give her full name, the Reverend Julia Joyce-Miesse. Did I say Miesse correctly? Wonderful. Her head is nodding. The Reverend Julia Joyce-Miesse is a healer and a storyteller with a passion for teaching and empowering God's people to live into their baptismal covenant, living into a life of discipleship, loving all we encounter, caring for creation, and striving for the justice and dignity of all people as we work to become the beloved community God desires for us. A cradle Episcopalian, Pastor Julia was formed by the Episcopal Church in Charleston, South Carolina, where the seed of discernment for the priesthood was planted by Bishop Barbara Harris at an Episcopal youth conference. Pastor Julia also realized a call to healing, becoming a registered nurse, and has served as an emergency nurse for 23 years. Pastor Julia graduated from Virginia Theological Seminary in Alexandria, Virginia, speaking of DC, where she received her master's degree in divinity and was awarded the Dean's Cross for servant leadership for creating and running the COVID-19 program, caring for the students, families, faculty, and staff at Virginia Theological Seminary through the pandemic. And other recipients of the Dean's Cross include Madeleine Albright, Barbara Bush, and Wendell Berry. Pastor Julia served as the deacon of St. John's Episcopal Church in Georgetown before ordination to the priesthood. Pastor Julia moved to Ohio recently from Boulder, Colorado, where she was the associate rector of St. John's Episcopal Church. She is blessed to be the mother of an incredible adult son, Taylor, and to have the joy of serving two lively cats, Sherman and Murphy, with the love of her life, the Reverend Iva Joyce-Miesse. I'm sorry, Iva Joyce-Miesse. Yes, Miesse. Oh my goodness, I'm going to get it right. Welcome, 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 Pastor
Thank you.
Julia. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you so much for being here. There's so much to dig into, I think, in your life story. There's so much there. And we got to start at the beginning where we always start. And that is, what is your testimony? What is your story at the intersection of queer identity and Christian faith?
Thank you so much. So my story takes us back a little bit to young Julia. Like you shared, I grew up in the Episcopal Church. And so being in church, if the doors were open, we were pretty much there for all the things. And I was blessed to have a youth group that had leaders that were really invested in who we were. Now I'm going to take that to one little boundary. Growing up in Charleston, South Carolina, there are expectations of who you're going to be and who you are maybe not allowed to be. And it was actually, I was probably 12 or 13. And I was dancing in a ballet company in Charleston. And in ballet, there were no boundaries of gender or how we loved, because we expressed love in so many different ways through dance. And so I think that is one layer that formed me. Another layer that formed me was I knew that there were gay folk in our dance class because we were also, this is the height of the AIDS epidemic. And we were losing friends from the dance company. So I think that was a little part of the beginning of my wondering, because I thought that I knew who I was because I was different than so many of my other friends. Start at the very beginning, I am adopted, so I didn't look like my family, nor did I
Mm.
look like most of the people I went to school with, because I went to a private school where my mother worked, so I got to go for free. And I was not fully white, nor were we rich. And so there's aspects of who am I that I struggled with. But I felt in my core, because of my church and my youth group, that I was beloved. But I felt like I was beloved with some strings attached.
Mm.
And it was a little bit later in ballet, a group of us went to the opening of A Chorus Line when the movie came out.
I love that movie. It's such a good
Right.
one.
And where I kind of got soul punched was in the scene where they're singing "Who Am I Anyway?"
Mhm.
And they're looking into the mirrors because they're trying to be whatever the director wants them to be to get the show, right? But what I realized in that moment was the group that I was sitting with, several of us were teary because
Mm.
we were looking in the mirror and asking the same thing.
Yeah.
We were not able to be fully who we knew we were, and we couldn't talk about it with each other.
Yeah.
But shortly after that, a really good friend came into the studio, and he came up to me after class and he said, "Let me borrow your point shoes." And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Come on." And we ran to a small studio, and he put on my point shoes, and he danced so beautifully. His spirit was freed in that moment.
Mm.
And he stopped and looked in the mirror and he goes, "I know who I am." And we both giggled and cried, and he danced some more in my point shoes and grabbed my tutu and was fully himself in that moment. And we had the best time until someone ran into the studio and started screaming at us about being gay and about carrying the AIDS and going to
Oh,
kill
no.
people. And then we jumped into shame
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and didn't speak of it to each other, and certainly not to anybody else. Now, fast forward many, many years. In that time, I got married to a man, as was
Mhm.
expected, and had the most incredible, and I have the most incredible young adult son. And he is also an Episcopal priest, and
Oh,
we went to
wow.
seminary. And when we got to seminary, we were probably a month in, and we came out to each other because we were looking at all of the formation that was happening. And I said, "How does one stand at the altar and say, 'All are welcome, exactly
Mhm.
how you are,' if you don't feel authentically who you are?"
Yeah.
And we then came out to each other, and then we're like, "What do we do about this?" And so we went to the dean, and we're like, "Here we are." And we're like, "What do we do?" And he said, repent and get back in your closet, or I'll have his call pulled." I was 25. So
Oh,
that to me was like God saying, "Shame."
yeah.
And so we did. And we had so much shame, we didn't speak of it to each other at all. And we finished his 3 years of his master's. And then we went back to the East Coast of North Carolina. And he had his first church there. And it wasn't safe for us to be authentically who we were there. And so I felt like I was lying to God and lying to myself and
Mhm.
lying to the world.
Mhm.
And yet I grew up in Charleston, and we don't air our dirty laundry, and we keep a mask of smiles and all is well on our face.
Oh, yeah.
And from North Carolina, he got a call in Ohio in Lakewood. And we were there for about a year when we're like, "Okay, we're going to be able to come out here. This is going to
Yeah.
be awesome." We have friends who are gay. We were doing musical theater in our off time. And we had gay friends, and my son had friends who were gay or parents who were gay. Our son was raised to love all people.
Mhm.
And And so we're like, we can do this. So he made an appointment to speak to some of the leadership of the church the next week. Well, between that moment and that meeting, Gene Robinson was consecrated, our first gay bishop. And the Episcopal Church kind of lost its mind. People that we thought were great allies were saying some of the most horrific, painful things. And we went back into our closet, canceled that meeting. We called it our walk-in since there were two of us. And we went back in our closet because we thought, I guess only some people are allowed to be authentically who they are if you want to still do the work you hear God calling you to do.
Yeah.
And I should backtrack. Where part of my call came in was you said it in my bio. Sorry,
Yeah.
words. And right after high school, I went to a conference, and they said, if you want to sing in the final service, come to the ballroom at this time. Well, I'm that nerd, and I'm going to be there 15 minutes early because I'm also that nerd. And so I'm sitting in that room and doing a little kind of soul searching of what are my next steps? What does this look like? And Barbara Harris comes in the room. And I must have looked at her like she had 17 eyeballs, because after she finished talking to the people by the door, she came right over to me. She had this kind of gravelly voice, and she's like, "Honey, are you okay?" And I'm like, "Uh-huh." And she's like, "Never seen a woman in a collar?" I'm like, "No, ma'am." She's like, "Never seen a woman that looks like you in a collar?"
Oh.
"No, ma'am." And she said, "Never seen a woman that looks like you in purple?" I said, "No, ma'am." She said, "Well, this could be you." I'm like, "Oh, no, ma'am. I'm from Charleston, South Carolina." And that was it, because there was no women in leadership in the church at that time. I didn't have any models of that, right? But she planted the seed. And so then fast forward, and we're sorry about back and forth.
No, that's great. Thank you for sharing that part. Yeah.
So that's why I struggled with my ex-husband being at the altar and saying, all are welcome, if I didn't know if that really meant all.
Yeah.
And so then we journey through, and we get to Lakewood, and we finish Lakewood, and because his mother was unwell and he wanted to be closer to her. So we went to South Georgia. Now, if you want to talk about not being safe to be authentically who you are, it wasn't just about us. It was also about our son.
Yeah.
And, protecting one call and protecting our son was more important than anything at that point to me.
Yeah.
And so it was certainly not safe for us to be out. And so we had to wait until he graduated high school. So from 1997 to 2012, we lived as a happy family. We did not divorce because we had any horrific fights or any of those things. We actually divorced because we loved each other, that we wanted each other to be authentically, fully who they were.
Yeah.
And through all of those times, my faith stayed with me. My faith kept telling me that I was worthy and I was beloved, even though the world didn't really mirror that back.
Yeah.
My faith stayed with me as a biracial, queer little kid, when everybody else looked differently and they had crushes on people that I didn't have crushes on.
Right.
And couldn't say anything about it.
Yeah.
But in the stillness of my heart, I felt like there was going to be a time that God still was with me in this, that there would be a time where I could be authentically me. So we did get divorced, and I continued working as an ER nurse, and my best friend and I travel nursed and moved from place to place. But I kind of existed then as kind of just me being me and not seeking anything outside of that. I needed to be whole within myself before I could seek to be whole with someone else.
Yeah.
And then I went to seminary, not looking for anything but my master's degree in divinity, so that I could live into the seed that Barbara planted. And graduated, had phenomenal friends there, graduated from seminary, took my first call in Colorado, and sat at the house, and I'm like, "Whew, I really do miss my friend. I sure do miss my friend. Oh, she's not just my friend." And that's where the long distance courting of the love of my life and now my wife began and grew and blossomed. And then she wooed me to Ohio. In Colorado, we had 350 days of sunshine and no humidity. And she
Yeah.
wooed me to Ohio with muddy rivers and humidity.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
We're known
now
for doing
we
that. Yeah.
right? But now we are two queer, multi-intersectional humans filled with the love of God, doing everything in our power to share that with anyone who has not heard that or does not feel that for themselves completely. And for those who do feel that, empowering them to be part of a movement to make space for all people around the table, whatever their intersection might be. Because there is no box that God puts people in and says, all are but.
Right.
No, that's Christian nationalism.
Yes.
God is broad and open, arms open, and dreams for the time where we can come into our fullness of our authentic selves.
Absolutely. That is a beautiful, beautiful story. I first want to say that I too wooed a Southerner to Ohio. So
Yeah,
I am
I see
also
you.
guilty. Okay. Yeah. Right. Like, ooh, I'm not the only
It's
one.
80 today. It's going to snow tomorrow.
Yes. I mean, I'm told all the time, February 15th hits, it's supposed to be 80 degrees outside. What are we doing? Right. So the entire second half of winter is just one big question mark
That is true.
hanging over their head.
That is true.
But we're so happy that you are here. I'm so glad
Thank
that
you.
Iva wooed you here to Ohio because you're doing such amazing work here. And I want to talk about that work that you are doing and what it means to you. So one of
Absolutely.
the things that we talked about, or you told us about as we were preparing for this interview, is the intersection of justice and our baptismal vows.
Yes.
And I would love to hear you say more about that. What do you mean by baptismal vows? And then how does justice intersect with that concept?
Perfect. So in our faith tradition, we in the Episcopal Church, you are often baptized as a child, and other folk make vows on your behalf. And then when you are older, you go through confirmation where you make an adult profession of your own faith, and you make those vows for yourself. And those vows include things like participating in the reading of Scripture, dwelling in the Word, in prayer, in community. But it also says that we will strive for justice and peace among all people, and respect the dignity of every human being. And in my heart, I just believe that if we lived that in all of the ways of our life, what would our world look like? And so my passion in ministry is to help people deconstruct pieces that where they've been put together and learned a certain way, like I did in Charleston, South Carolina, where I was Pocahontas every single year because I had the most melanin in my school. And they would put me in the suede fringe dress and braid my hair. And we would do the little play of everybody joining a table at the same time and sharing a meal, right? We have to deconstruct that.
Yeah.
And we have to deconstruct what we have been told as far as where people come from, the ways people work, or their, quote, lack of work. We have to deconstruct things like, well, if they would pull themselves up by their bootstraps and help people understand that they need boots first before there are any straps to pull. And so right now, we're about to finish a series at St. Luke's where we are moving from thoughts and prayers to faith and action. And we are equipping people with tools to be able to step into situations in the world that is on fire right now and be an ally or speak in spaces where they've never spoken. What are your gifts and talents, and how can you use those to bring about the beloved community for all people? Because that is what it's about, right? It's for everyone. So bringing the work of our friends from Right to Be and the 5Ds that give you 5 different ways, depending on what your risk tolerance is, to step in and obliterate bystander syndrome and actually move into that space. These are ways we can love in different ways, right?
Yeah.
The 4 roles in the dismantling of an empire.
Yeah.
What is your role? Take that with your 5D and look at the world, and where is God calling you to both respect the dignity, but also strive for justice. They're not independent. And much like, there's not a hierarchy on or a point system on sin. There's not one sin that's 5 points and one sin that's 10 points, and you get to give $20 and get rid of a 15er.
Well, they used to, the Catholic Church.
Well, I have thoughts about that, but we don't have enough time in this podcast. But just like that, the vows we can't pick and choose. And we can't pick and choose what Scripture says to fit our agenda. We need to first look at Scripture and see the translation and maybe ask what agenda it may have been written through. Whose eyes and experience was this written through? I mean, most of what comes to us started with a white male presentation. Right. It was their experience, right? But then we had white females bring about feminist theology. Well, that's great, but it didn't take care of anybody who was of color. Yep. So then we've got our Black males who had done phenomenal work in Black theology, but they didn't really speak for the experience of the Black woman. Right. So we have womanist theology, which is my favorite. It's where I find myself and where I identify, because it's an empty cross. And it's an empty cross because one day there is hope that no one will be on that cross being lynched or treated as other or oppressed. That is the hope that every one of us are redeemed. And it's also the understanding that we have a God that knows what it is to walk this earth and to suffer too. So we're not alone, and there's always space at the table.
That is so beautiful, Pastor Julia. And I just want to highlight a couple things that you said. First is that you drew a direct line from the vow striving for justice and the act of dismantling empire. And I think we all believe here that there not enough Christian churches are talking about dismantling empire, right?
Well, I think that we have to understand that if empire is serving some groups, why would they want to dismantle it?
Exactly. But we still need to. We're still called to do it
100%.
Because you cannot have justice within empire. Empire is all about oppression, and that's not justice. That's not recognizing the dignity of all people. And then the idea
none of us can breathe until all the knees are off all the necks.
Exactly. And then also the idea of literally getting away or not moving beyond thoughts and prayers with the idea that love is an action verb. Right. So if we are truly called to love our neighbor, we are called to act out of that love for our neighbor.
Look at the modeling of Jesus. Jesus went to, he sat with, he ate with, he talked with, he listened to, then he shared story, then he empowered for folks to follow, come and see. But the first act was to join with.
Yes.
Not to ask. Not to come and be with me where I am. Right. Let me come to where you are. Let me hear your story. Let me hear your experience.
Jesus was really good at centering. Like,
Mm,
I just want to say that's for my DEI training hat,
mm.
but Jesus was really good at centering. And I think that if we recognize that more, we'd be more willing to center when we're trying to work through these, systems that we're trying to get them to change the way that they're doing things. And we're saying, hey, center the least of these, which is exactly what Jesus said, right?
100%. And, that's a question I ask my congregation is when you hear a story, who is being centered? Why?
Mm,
Whose voice are you not hearing?
yes.
Why?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
That's
then what is God saying, calling you to do?
right. Right. Because you are a unique individual. You are God's creation. God built you to do a very unique thing. So we can't always look to other people's callings in order to figure out what our path is, but that's scary. I mean, it is
I
scary to walk a path on, and God having your hand is a beautiful thing, and God having your hand is a very scary thing.
absolutely. I tell all of my folks, we were never promised safety. We were
Mm,
promised love. And if we
okay.
look at the stories of all of those who have gone before, all of our queer ancestors upon whose shoulders we stand, right? It was a bumpy road. So
Yeah.
it's not going to be easy. And yet, when you are living authentically and you surround yourself with people on the journey that are doing similar work,
Hmm.
um, you can join arm in arm, and there's strength in that. We're supposed to be in community.
Right. Right. We are supposed to be gathering. That's been a big word for me in 2026 is the idea
Mm,
of gathering, and
mm,
that in and of itself is an act. We
mm,
usually think gather and do something. And
mm.
sometimes it's just the gathering actually
It is,
that is the act.
and I think one of the other things we're working on is gathering, being transformed, to be sent to transform. Right? We can't
Yes.
sit comfortably. Oh, okay, now I'm gay, and I can be me.
Hmm.
I have siblings out there who are struggling. Right? We know that in our history, lesbians stood in spaces during the HIV/AIDS crisis. And
Right.
my friends, we all need to be standing in spaces with our trans siblings.
Absolutely.
If you can walk down the street relatively safely, just consider what it is like to be in other shoes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, I want to go back though to your story because I don't want to lose sight of what you shared with us. And that is literally that you had moments of stepping out of the closet to different extents. Multiple, I think I counted 4 moments of coming out of the closet, and 3 times that door was shut in your face. And it again reminds me of my DEI trainings, of talking about what it feels like to be an LGBTQ plus person who has a door shut in their face, and the idea that you never try to walk through that door again because that's
Mm,
such a horrific experience. But Julia, you kept trying.
mm.
Tell us about that because you kept trying and you kept your faith. I mean, that's just amazing.
It's funny when I came out to my mom as an adult, um, for several weeks, she didn't speak to me.
Yeah.
And I was gutted.
Hmm.
Um, and then I received a letter in the mail. And I think one thing she said in there answers your question a little bit. She said that she's always known me to be scrappy and tenacious and to dance to the beat of my own drum.
There it is.
And I think the beat of my own drum is the song in my heart that God has placed there to protect me and to
Mm,
dwell in when it's not safe to step outside the nest.
yeah.
And then also in any good piece of music, there is this piece that says, "You can do it," and you kind of garner the courage to try again. And sometimes it's because you see when you look into the eyes of someone else, you are looking to the eyes of God, even if it's
Hmm.
someone you don't like and who is trying to oppress you. God's in there too. We got to
Yeah.
help them find it sometimes, but God's in there too. And
Somewhere.
I think some of those times where I have had the courage, it's because I knew that not only was I not alone because I had God with me, but I knew that there were other people out there,
Hmm.
and that I could call upon,
Okay.
um, and or would have my back. And then sometimes I think, like in the world that is right now, I have said many times, I'm going to go down like Bonhoeffer, because I can't sit in a space where someone else is behind that door,
Hmm.
or under that knee,
Hmm.
or in a detention cell,
Yeah.
um, and sit and eat cheese and crackers and act like everything's okay, because I know what it is to be on that other side in my own intersections. I don't know everyone else's experience, but I know what suffering feels like for me.
Right.
And so I think that's what finally helped me kick that door. And we actually, when we built our house, we wrote on the closet of our bedroom, inside our bedroom, "Never stay in here again."
Amen. Amen. That is absolutely beautiful. So tell me about being a reverend now. What is it? What is it like? I mean, we know what you're doing. You're out here, changing thoughts and thoughts and prayers into, words and actual action, love and action. But what is it like for you? And I don't want to say in any way that you have to speak for all LGBTQ plus clergy, but what is it like for you being an LGBTQ plus clergy member? What has that
Mhm.
experience been like?
Well, I think it is different in different spaces.
Mm,
So within the Episcopal Diocese of Southern Ohio, we are the Episcopal Church, and we are welcoming and open, and I have support. Now, does that mean every Episcopal church is going to be thrilled to see me? Every person, every church is going to be thrilled to see me? No, humans are going to human in different
yes.
spaces, but I am safe within the diocese.
Okay.
There are spaces that have not been safe in this role. Recently, after the murder of Charlie Kirk, I received 4 death threats.
Oh
And
my,
one
I'm
of
so
those death
sorry.
threats was actually a call that described what I was wearing in the car that I came out of when I got to church. So they were on
Oh,
our property, right?
oh, mm,
And it's those tactics of name calling, and first of all, you're a woman, and by reading your things, I could see you're biracial, so they called me half breed, and I
mm,
said, "Oh, you've been listening to Share, so I know about your age."
yeah,
Um, I
yeah.
they said that I had no right to take the good people of this village down the toxic in my toxic way to hell. So
Mm,
it's not all rainbows and butterflies, right?
right.
There are people that do not agree with who it is to be who I am, and I pray for them, but
Hmm.
that's not my problem. A lovely learning to be 54. There are things that I've learned that I was not good at in my 20s.
Yeah.
Um, One of those things is I am to be responsive to, but not responsible for.
Ah,
So
yes.
I I do what I hear God calling me to do, and I do it. I don't stand up at the front of the church and recite my personal gay anthem on Sundays. I just exist of who I am. Being a member of the LGBTQ plus community is one of my intersections,
Hmm.
right? And it's one that I love and that I am super comfortable to share because I work too hard to be able to
Right.
share
Yes.
it.
Yes.
And so I will burst forth with all of that, and then also empower my friends to be good allies. And
Hmm.
what does that look like? Right? We had
Right.
Envy come and speak and teach,
Yes.
to give those tools, right?
Yes.
Um, on an average day, I think being a queer clergy person impacts how I write.
Okay.
It impacts how I think and how I interact with others, because I believe that it is cracked open within me insight of what it is to be in spaces that are not open or not
Hmm.
accepted. It helps me to be more open to understand the lived experience of someone without being able to define that experience because it's not my experience.
Right.
But it helps me to ask questions like, who's not at the table? What
Yes.
are we not hearing? Whose voices have not been lifted? Mary Church Terrell says, lift as we climb. As I've been able to climb out of my hole of not being able to be myself, it is my job to bring my siblings with me up that net as we get out of that hole.
Yeah.
And that can be in different places. It could be talking about bias. It could be talking about racism. It could be talking about homophobia. It is different ways where we need to help our world deconstruct the structures that have caused oppression in
Hmm.
empire
Hmm.
and help take that same structure and turn it into a bigger table.
Right. And as someone who has experienced oppression and empire, you have a willingness to deconstruct those systems, whereas someone who hasn't experienced as much marginalization or marginalization in the same ways might not have those same incentives because those structures might actually be supporting them. And so it's you
And
almost.
it's not just courage though, it is accompaniment.
Mhm.
It is that I have found people along my path that have been that shoulder that holds me up or has been the person to push me a little bit, to stretch outside my comfort zone, to
Okay.
remember what it was like to not get comfortable in
Mhm.
the okay, um, and to love me when I'm not at my best,
Yeah.
right? And to ask hard questions that
Yes.
helps me to grow into the next place of becoming in my life, right? It's if we think about revelation is a revealing, right? It's
Yes.
the people who have taken the next layer off for me to see a little clearer, right? We know in Corinthians, it talks about seeing in a mirror dimly, but then we will see face to face.
Mhm.
I think as we become and as we experience and as we challenge ourselves to open and be who God is calling us to be. And we have people that empower us and give us the tools to do that. Those layers are lifted so
Yeah.
that we begin to see even clearer ourselves in
Right.
where we have work to do, in the work that we do with our therapists and our spiritual directors, so
Yes.
that we can be that for our own living our time here, right? We right now as we're recording this, we are in Lent, and if we remember Ash Wednesday, we're more reminded of our mortality, right? We
Right.
began from ash and we will return to dust and we'll return to dust. And what are we doing between those periods of dust?
Right.
And how are we wiping that dust away a little at a time so that we can see what God is calling us to be? And we can also see the beauty that God has created in this world that God wants for us.
Beautiful. So, so beautifully said. Thank you. And I want to ask another question if you'll indulge me. And this is because I also have a young adult son. And I think they're amazing. And so I definitely, when you were telling your story and talking about what it would mean to come out for him, and how that might impact his life. And I know that some of our listeners are parents,
Mm.
who might be considering coming out to their children, their adult children. And what
They
is
already
that?
know.
Well, well,
I will say my experience was
okay.
when we came out to our son, he was 18
Hmm.
and he had known since he was 13. He had seen little things or heard little things or wondered little things. He had watched things at his friends' homes who had a parent or parents who were a member of the LGBTQ community. And he wondered, but was too afraid of saying something to one of us.
Mm-hmm.
Because he also didn't want to upset any apple carts. I think
Right.
he knew, right? At 13, they have so much more wisdom than we give them credit for. Although sometimes you wonder, are they breathing? Taking nourishment.
Yes, yes. But they
He
know you, they know their parents
knew.
so well. I mean, they literally have been studying you as their parent since
It's a
day one.
sociology, right, and anthropology opportunity in a family system. So
Yeah.
they're watching and they're learning. So, coming out, we were met immediately with, I know. And the beautiful piece in the I know is even though we had made a vow to one another to stay within the closet for the time that Taylor was younger and
Mm-hmm.
to support him in a world that was topsy-turvy, we also embedded deep truths of what it means to love all people,
Mm-hmm.
what it means to walk with people on their journeys, even if it's not your journey. The day he came home, I think it was third grade, he said, Mom, tomorrow morning I need a really big breakfast because I need to fast with Mohammed. And I said, oh, okay, let's back up a little bit.
Yeah.
Which Mohammed?
Yes.
He's like, my friend. And then I understood, okay, he's got a friend. He's like, yeah, they have to go to the media center, which we used to call a library,
Mm-hmm.
during lunch because they're fasting during this time, and I don't want him to be alone. Now, he didn't know that there were going to be many other Muslim children joining his friend Mohammed in the media center. What he thought was his friend was going to be alone, and he didn't want him to be alone, right?
Yep.
So he wanted to, and then we talked about fasting. I'm like, well, that would actually mean between this time and this time. He's like, I hear you. And what I can do is I
Yes.
can fast lunch. So I need a big breakfast, But so he was learning about where he was and all of
Yes.
that, but he wanted to be with his friend. So I think, he knew. The answer is he knew.
Mm-hmm.
Um, don't discount their heart and their knowledge. Don't discount the places where it is still hard to.
Yes.
The separation, even though we separated beautifully and not these big fights and fighting over stuff, it's still now a mom's house and a dad's house.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then my ex-husband got married. I sang at their wedding, and I
Oh.
adore his husband, and they're perfect together. Um, but there's this awkwardness. Just name it. Don't make
Mm-hmm.
them sit in it. Just
Mm-hmm.
name, you know what? This could be awkward. And I want you to know we still love each other, or whatever your story is.
Yeah.
I think that, and the exciting thing is this June, he is getting married. And so now he's got two parents who are Episcopal priests and another mom who is an Episcopal priest too. And so they talked back and forth and they prayed together. And her mother has some issues and lives with them. Her dad
Mm-hmm.
died suddenly. Um,
Oh.
and so his dad is going to walk her down the aisle.
Mm.
My wife is going to do the service, and I get to be mom for both. So
It's
there are
beautiful.
beautiful
Yes.
ways to come through this, but communication, pretending it doesn't exist, only creates a wound. And in nursing, you have to bring a little nursing out because
Please do.
that was my first calling, and it's healing in a different way. What I do now is healing in a different way, but in nursing, we have a thing called secondary healing by secondary intention. And that is when a wound doesn't heal quickly, or had a problem and got infected, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to scoop out the infection and put the medicine in at the bottom layer and allow it to heal layer at a time,
Yeah.
which takes so much more time. But if you just put a Band-Aid over it, the infection continues to dwell there, and then it burrows into other places.
Right.
So bringing that around to scripture, right? We had to get Pharaoh's heart. We prayed for Pharaoh's heart not to be hardened. Don't harden your heart when you feel that it might be hard, and so you just want to be able to bypass it.
Mm-hmm.
Spend time in prayer. Talk to the people that you feel safe to. I think everybody, given the opportunity, and I realize in many places it is privilege, but if you have the opportunity to have a therapist, talk this stuff out, because, I'm an external processor, and I'm going to say 700 things that I don't really mean till I get to the thing that I mean.
Absolutely. Yes.
So talk it out with someone, but realize that your kids know, realize that your kids love you, and continue. If you're not able to come out in the time that you're not out, realize that they are watching. So what might you add to the way you are that's authentic, that might prepare them for the time that will come when it comes?
It's beautiful. I think that's wonderful advice for any parents who are in that situation, and wonderful reminder, right? That our kids know stuff. They're so intelligent. They're watching. They know us. And we can be honest with them. Sometimes we want to protect them and treat them with kid gloves, but they're stronger than we give them credit for. And they're that strong because we raised them to be that strong. So we should go ahead and recognize it, right?
100%.
Awesome. I'm looking over at my co-host, Ben. Just want to make sure that he doesn't have any questions for Pastor Julia.
So I do have one, and it kind of follows up on something we were talking about a little earlier, but it also relates back to the interview that we did with your wife, with Iva, who I just want to acknowledge for listeners who have been listening for both of our seasons. Iva was a guest last season, is also a member of the Love Boldly board, and someone that is a beloved friend of many of us who from Love Boldly and whatnot. But what I wanted to focus on, and our listeners can't see, obviously just hearing us can't see what we're wearing, but I want to acknowledge you're wearing a collar. And I know this was something that Iva also spoke to about, not just the symbolism behind clergy collars, the real importance of both the symbol of the collar, but also just putting that collar on. I remember Iva making the comment on her episode that there were a lot of emotions for both of you as you watched each other put on a collar and go to work at times when the other was not serving in a clergy role.
Yeah.
So I wonder if you can talk about that a little bit more, about where you see that symbolism of the collar, and what that has meant for you, both going back to when your husband or your ex-husband was a minister, and now for yourself as well.
So putting on the collar, the first time comes with so many different emotions of what I was told I couldn't be. All of the pieces of the responsibility that comes with wearing it. Sometimes the pieces that the collar seems to be accompanied immediately with a crosshairs on your back. But more often than not, putting on the collar comes with gratitude. I am grateful to be able to have had the blessing to go through a process where I was lifted through and approved to go study, and grateful to have the formation that I had and open my mind to so many other ways of church and of theology that I'd never seen before. If you were to look at my bookcases, half of it is liberation theology. And that's where I find my home. That's the story of God's people from Exodus on, truly back to Genesis, if you want to get down there, but we don't have time for that today. But putting on the collar is the gratitude and the responsibility, the joy, the tears. I hold other people's story in my heart and lift it to God. I catch strange glances as I walk into a grocery store. Often get asked if I'm a nun, because they don't know what to do with a woman in a collar sometimes.
Yeah, it's
But let me tell you my favorite collar story with Iva. First, I'll say yes. I want to acknowledge there was a time when Iva, when we got married, early in our marriage, there wasn't a church geographically near in Colorado. So she worked as a physical therapist and I worked as a priest. And every time I put on my collar, I know her heart was breaking that she couldn't serve where she felt called to, in the way she felt called to. And then when we moved here, there was not a church for me. And for 9 months, I went back to the emergency room and worked in the emergency room. And I watched her put on their collar. So we know what it feels like to be called to do something and be limited, and the pain that is. We also know the burden that it is, and we are able to hold that together. And we have a fun family rule that we come home at the end of our day and we vomit out the day in 15 minutes, and then we close that drawer and we stay together as spouses, and what's going on in our world and what needs to be done to the house and what's going right. What does the week look like? But not the work part of work in that way. But my favorite putting on the collar story was the first time that we could both put on a collar and walk in pride. The first time we did it together was in Denver. And in our pride shirts, our Episcopal Church pride shirts, in a big group of Episcopalians, queer and ally together, holding hands and watching people's facial reactions as we walked by. And they would look at us and they'd look at our hands and we'd be like, yes, it's my wife. This is my wife. It's my wife. And you saw this burden lift in some people, that it's not just a story that you are welcome to come to our church and we will pray for the person you are, but you are actually truly welcome to come to our church as you are, holy as you are, and we will celebrate you. And so being able to share our love with one another in a place like Pride Parade, in our collars, and walking down the street holding hands and seeing hope in faces where people had discounted that they could be a person of faith because they had been hurt by the church at large, right? Who took an agenda and put them under their knee. That's my favorite collar story.
It's a beautiful story, and it's modeling possibility the same way that possibility was modeled for you. So I hope you feel that kind of closed circle, that you have absolutely lived that out in your life. And thank you for modeling possibility for so many people. I will say Bishop Yvette Flunder modeled possibility for me. I was like, oh my gosh, that's possible. And it totally changed my trajectory with faith. So thank you for doing that modeling. I know so many people need it. Absolutely. All right, y'all. This has been an amazing episode. And you already heard Pastor Julia said she could go much deeper. So we're going to have her come back so we could get a little bit deeper. But this was an amazing first conversation with you. Thank you so much for sharing everything that you shared with us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Well, let's jump into our two segments. The first one is the query of the day. And yes, It's a pun. Today's query, we're going to go all the way back to the beginning of our conversation and that idea of moving from thoughts and prayers to actual love and action. And I want to ask both Ben and Pastor Julia, what is your go-to action when you need to move beyond thoughts and prayers and you are going to an action? I know not every situation is the same, but if there is an action that you're like, this is my lane, this is my ministry in those moments, what is that? Pastor Julia, I'll start with you. Yep.
I think relationship is the foundation of discipleship. So my first go-to action is to try to create relationship, especially relationship across difference, to try to understand why someone or a group may be acting in a certain way. Try to understand the soup that they swam in so that I can maybe get some insight, not necessarily to have civil discourse to have them come to my way, but to see if we can find some middle way that takes oppression off, right? Releases the knee and helps to bring some humanity. I think the world dehumanizes quickly.
Yes.
And so if we create relationship, when we share story, it's really hard to dehumanize someone or put someone in a box once you hear their story. And you have shared story, not one-sided, but true relationship. When you share story together, you see that person in a different space. So I think my number one go-to is relationship.
Love that. Love that. Thank you. Ben, what about you?
So I kind of wish I would have gotten there first because I completely agree with relationship. But honestly, the one that I go to first, particularly in times that need like a certain response, is writing, is putting ideas, putting thoughts out into the world. Because we talked about callers, and callers I think are even a better example. But another thing that we have as clergy often is the use of the term reverend. Which can be used in a very similar way. One of the things I love about writing, I enjoy writing just in general, but is putting an idea out there in a space where, again, people have either not seen queer clergy or people are not as don't expect to see queer clergy show up, or don't expect to see insert something around clergy or around identity in general. If that's a chance to say, hey, yes, I'm a clergy person who has struggled with mental illness my entire life, and here I'm talking about this in a place where you don't hear that narrative, or whatever it might be. And for each of us and our own identities and experiences, I love to be able to create some of that space. Just like I love, and I agree with Julia about relationship, but also being able to create some of those spaces where it's just like, hey, I've never met a clergy person. I've never met a person in general who would be this open about talking about a struggle, an identity, whatever it might be, in this space can not only destigmatize things, but can also just give people that opening to start saying, hey, I might, or I am able to claim who I am and to be authentic in spaces or in relationships that I never thought I could be open about before. And in my life as an educator, I have seen that being very powerful for students who say, oh, I didn't think I could get help for this mental illness or for this thing I'm going through, but now I'm seeing this leader that I respect say that he has too. There's my opening.
Right.
And it might just be a little bit of opening, it might just be that little crack that someone needs to walk through, but it can make all the difference. And just like, we've each been affected by someone who said, yeah, you can be in this space. For me, it was Gene Robinson. Just that little crack can make all the difference.
100%.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Ben. I'm going to give a very, I think Ben already knows what this answer is going to be because I'm such an extrovert. It's going to be showing up. It is so, um, seeing people is such a big deal for me. And isolation is such something I struggle with, feeling isolated, feeling alone. It's a whole lifelong thing. And I never want anyone else to feel alone or isolated. And so showing up and gathering and so because it's saying I'm coming out of my house, I'm coming out of my comfort zone, I'm taking time away from my family, I'm taking time away from my work, something, and I'm devoting it to you, right? I'm actually going to come to you whoever you is or wherever the place is. And so I think that's the first thing that I look to do is to show up in the space. And also recognizing that when people don't show up, people get a false idea about what the reality of something is, right? If we don't show up, then people are going to be like, it's a numbers game. It's a whole visibility thing for us. And so I never want to forget that because as we've seen, nothing is guaranteed, y'all. We got to keep fighting for it and we got to hold on to it.
Every day.
Every day, every day. Well, that closes up the first segment. Now we're going to move into our moment in queer history. Ben, what you got for us today?
Well, before you go here, I just want to say I love doing these because as we've moved from kind of basic queer and queer Christian history to a little bit more broad of a historical look, it's forced me to learn things I didn't know before. And this is definitely one of those. So I want to talk just for a moment about a news journal that published for about 10 years, from 1988 to 1998, called The Second Stone. And The Second Stone was labeled as America's Gay and Lesbian Christian News Journal. And that's literally what it was. It published approximately 4 to 5 times a year and put out fairly sizable issues, about 50 pages each, of different content from queer Christian groups and queer Christian ministries of that time. And, reported on everything from very positive achievements in those areas to relatively negative things in those areas. Now, as it was a print resource of its time, everything's still based on, some, who's doing what in different parts of the country. And how can you contact or how can you get involved in something that might be not in your part of the area or part of the world? But that said, it did portray a very positive view of queer Christians at a time when those communities would still have been pretty far flung and, could easily look like you would be the only queer Christian in the world. Even though we know that narrative still exists, that narrative is also easily broken down with Google searches. But I just really, looking at some of these issues, have to acknowledge how much of a bridge builder this magazine, this news journal would have been. Again, this is called Second Stone, America's Gay and Lesbian Christian News Journal, published between 1988 and 1998.
I'm going to go ahead and warn folks that if you Google that, a Steam game, a nerdy Steam game, and I say nerdy with love because my wife has a Steam Deck, and a Steam game is going to show up. So you're going to want to put magazine or journal in your Google search there.
One of the other things for people who might be wanting to Google this, I found it via the LGBTQ Religious Archives Network, which is an organization that Love Boldly has worked with in the past as well. Their mission is preserving specifically religious based LGBTQ historical material. And the Second Stone is one of their online news archives, material archives.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, Ben. I love it when we learn something new. It's amazing. All right, y'all. That brings us to the end of another amazing episode. Cannot thank you enough, Julia, for being our guest today. Is there anything that you would like to tell folks about, or any social media that you would like to share?
I do not have anything in June that I know of at this time.
Got it. But
My son's getting married.
Oh, then you're going to be busy. It is a busy June for you. But share again your church name. So
Yes, sure. St. Luke's Episcopal Church in Granville, Ohio.
Beautiful. Thank you. Okay, Ben, any Love Boldly news to share?
This episode comes out in kind of a strange part of June for us because the Columbus Pride will have passed. And several other of kind of our big events will pass for June. So I would just encourage folks to check out and continue to check out the Buckeye Flames Pride Guide, which is something they put together every year that lists all the prides, all the different pride celebrations, pride-related events that are going on in the state of Ohio. And there will definitely be pride events going on beyond June 21st. And I encourage folks also to just take a look, when you take a look at that guide, to take a look at any events that are happening after the month of June. There are always pride events that happen in September, October, other times throughout the year, because we know that pride is not just one month, not just one day, but is literally every year.
Yay. All right, y'all. That wraps it up for us for another episode of Coming Out Christian. Thank you so much for listening. Please don't forget, if you haven't yet, why haven't you liked? Why haven't you subscribed? Why haven't you told a friend? That would be such a beautiful thing to do. But most importantly, please join us back here next week for another episode of Coming Out Christian.
Thanks so much for joining us today. We hope this conversation encouraged you, challenged you, and maybe just helped you feel a little less alone on your journey. If this podcast has been meaningful to you, would you consider supporting the work of Love Boldly? Love Boldly's mission is to create spaces where LGBTQIA+ people can flourish in Christianity, and your donation helps make conversations like this one possible. You can give at www.loveboldly.net/donate. That's www.loveboldly.net/donate. Want to stay connected with the podcast? Follow us on Instagram at comingoutchristian_podcast for updates, resources, and community. Until next time, remember that you can be queer and Christian and queer.